The Iridian exploration vessel, Zenith, plummets through Earth's atmosphere, its hull ablaze. Commander Xena grips her control panel, blue fingers dancing across alien symbols as she fights to maintain stability. The ship crashes into the lush canopy of the Amazon rainforest, metal shrieking against ancient trees. Xena emerges from the smoking wreckage, her tall, blue-skinned form illuminated by bioluminescent patterns, pulsing with adrenaline. She surveys the damage, antennae twitching at the unfamiliar sense of Earth's flora. A clearing catches her eye, a human structure, abandoned and overgrown. The Iridian commander approaches cautiously, her translator decoding faded signs. Research Outpost Alpha. Inside, nature has begun to reclaim the space. Leaves carpet the floor, vines creep through broken windows. Xena's acute hearing picks up a sound, a soft whimper. She follows the noise to a makeshift crib fashioned from scientific equipment. Inside lies a human infant, eyes wide with curiosity at the alien visitor. Xena's heart races as she lifts the child, cradling him awkwardly in her four-fingered hands. A nearby console flickers to life. Two human faces appear on screen, their expressions weary but determined. "If you're watching this," the woman says, her voice cracking, "it means we didn't make it. This is Henry Reyes, our son. He's special." The man continues, "Henry is the rightful heir to Earth's unified government. We hid him here to protect him from the pandemic ravaging our world. Please, whoever finds this, keep him safe. The fate of humanity may depend on it." Xena looks from the screen to the child in her arms. Henry gurgles, reaching for her luminescent skin. In that moment, she makes a decision that will alter the course of two civilizations. Using Iridian technology, Xena places Henry in a stasis pod aboard her repaired ship. For the next 2 decades, they traverse the galaxy together. Xena intermittently awakens Henry, educating him about his human heritage and Iridian culture. She watches him grow in fits and starts, her maternal feelings deepening with each passing year. In 2065, as Henry reaches physical adulthood, a transmission from Earth crackles through the ship's comm system. Humanity has recovered from the pandemic and now seeks its lost prince to lead a new era of interstellar exploration. Xena's antennae droop as she realizes her time with Henry is coming to an end. She turns to find him standing in the doorway, no longer a child, but a striking young man. Their eyes meet and the air between them charges with unspoken tension. As Xena sets a course for Earth, her duty to return Henry wars with her growing attraction. Unknown to them, a Proximan war fleet intercepts the transmission, plotting to capture the human prince and seize control of Earth's resources. The Zenith accelerates towards Henry's homeworld, carrying its precious cargo, a prince raised by aliens, an alien commander with conflicted loyalties, and the promise of humanity's cosmic destiny. Behind them, Proximan ships give chase, their weapons primed for the coming confrontation. The Zenith streaked through space, its engines straining as Xena pushed the ship to its limits. In the cockpit, Henry stood behind her chair, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of hyperspace visible through the viewport. "We're approaching the Sol system," Xena announced, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "You're home." Henry's breath caught in his throat. "I've waited so long for this moment, but now—" He trailed off, unable to articulate the storm of emotions whirling inside him. Xena turned to face him, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing softly. "What is it, Henry?" Before he could respond, a proximity alarm blared through the ship. Xena's fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a tactical display. Her eyes widened as she saw the swarm of red dots converging on their position. "Proximan War Fleet," she hissed. "They must have intercepted the transmission from Earth." Henry leaned in, studying the display. "How many?" "Too many," Xena replied grimly. She gestured to a secondary console. "I need you on weapons. Remember your training." Henry nodded, sliding into the seat. His hands moved over the alien controls with surprising confidence, muscle memory from years of Xena's instruction taking over. The Proximan ships dropped out of hyperspace, their sleek, predatory forms filling the viewport. At their center, a massive dreadnought loomed, its weapons already charging. Evasive maneuvers, Xena called out, sending the Zenith into a spiraling dive. Henry's fingers flew across his console, targeting incoming missiles and fighters. The ship shuddered as enemy fire impacted their shields, but Henry's quick reactions kept the worst at bay. "You're doing well," Xena said, pride evident in her voice. Their eyes met for a moment, and something electric passed between them. Henry felt his heart race, and it wasn't just from the adrenaline of combat. A Proximan cruiser exploded under their combined assault, and Henry let out a whoop of triumph. Without thinking, he reached out and grabbed Xena's hand. She squeezed back, her skin cool and smooth against his. In that moment of shared victory, the years of maternal care and growing attraction crystallized into something new. Henry leaned in, drawn by an irresistible force, and pressed his lips to Xena's. For a heartbeat, the battle faded away. Xena's luminescence flared brightly, her antennae quivering with surprise and longing. Then reality came crashing back as a Proximan energy beam sliced through their shields, tearing into the Zenith's hull. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as systems failed. Xena broke away, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to stabilize their trajectory. "The propulsion system is critically damaged," she reported, her voice tight with tension. "We can't outrun them like this." Henry's mind raced, searching for a solution. "What if we—" But Xena was already moving, activating a hidden panel on her console. "There's no time. You have to go." "What? No!" Henry protested, but Xena was already inputting commands. "The escape pod is equipped with a stealth drive," she explained rapidly. "It will get you to Earth safely. I'll draw them away." Before Henry could argue further, the floor beneath him opened up. He found himself sealed in a sleek pod, staring helplessly through a small viewport as Xena's face disappeared from view. The pod shot away from the Zenith, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to Proximan sensors. Henry pounded on the hatch, but it was no use. He could only watch as the Zenith, with Xena still aboard, turned to face the enemy fleet. Tears stung Henry's eyes as the Zenith vanished into the darkness of space, pursued by the Proximan armada. He clenched his fists, a mix of grief and grit surging through him. "I'll find you, Xena," he whispered. "I swear it." The pod's navigation system beeped, alerting Henry to a new development. A massive structure loomed ahead, Nexus 7, a sprawling space station known throughout the galaxy as a neutral trading hub. As the pod adjusted its course to dock with the station, Henry took a deep breath. He was on his own now, a prince of Earth about to step into a wider universe. But he had a mission, to reach his home planet and find a way to rescue Xena. The pod glided into one of Nexus 7's countless docking bays. Henry steeled himself as the hatch hissed open, revealing a bustling alien cityscape within the station. Beings of every conceivable shape and size moved through the crowded corridors, the air filled with a cacophony of alien languages. Henry stepped out, his Earth-made clothes marking him as an outsider. He squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Somewhere in this vast station, he would find the resources and allies he needed to continue his journey, and to save the woman who had become far more than just his guardian. As Henry stepped out of the escape pod, the sheer scale and diversity of Nexus 7 overwhelmed his senses. The cavernous docking bay teemed with life forms he'd only studied in Xena's holographic archives. Tentacled beings slithered past towering crystalline entities. The air hummed with a cacophony of languages, punctuated by the hiss of airlock seals and the whine of anti-gravity engines. A sharp buzz cut through the noise, emanating from a nearby security scanner. Henry tensed as a red light washed over him, followed by a series of rapid beeps. Before he could react, a gravelly voice boomed behind him. "Unidentified human, you will come with me." Henry turned to face the speaker, a massive, squid-like alien with mottled purple skin. Its cluster of eyes narrowed, focusing on Henry with unnerving intensity. "I am Security Chief Vexilor," the alien gargled through a translator. "You've triggered our systems. Explain yourself." Henry swallowed hard, weighing his options. He couldn't risk revealing too much about Xena or the Proximans, but he needed allies. "My name is Henry Reyes," he said, squaring his shoulders. I'm the heir to Earth's unified government. I need to return home." Vexilor's tentacles writhed, a gesture Henry couldn't interpret. After a tense moment, the security chief gestured with one appendage. "Follow me. We'll discuss this privately." As they moved through the crowded corridors, Henry marveled at the station's architecture. Sweeping arches of an unknown pearlescent material supported transparent domes that revealed the star-studded void beyond. The pair entered a stark office, where Vexilor subjected Henry to a barrage of questions. Henry carefully navigated the interrogation, revealing his royal heritage while omitting his connection to the Iridians. As he spoke, he noticed Vexilor's posture gradually relaxing. "A human prince," Vexilor mused, his translator failing to mask the curiosity in his tone. "This could be, advantageous for Nexus 7. Very well, I'll assist you." He tapped a curved console. "Lyra, report to my office immediately." Minutes later, the door slid open to reveal a slender humanoid with skin that shimmered like the surface of a soap bubble. Her eyes, pupilless and glowing softly, fixed on Henry with obvious intrigue. "This is Lyra, one of our top navigators," Vexilor explained. "She'll be your guide on Nexus 7 and help arrange your passage to Earth." Lyra inclined her head, her voice melodic as she spoke. "It's an honor, Prince Henry. Shall we begin our tour?" As they left Vexilor's office, Henry felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He'd gained allies, but every moment on Nexus 7 was a moment away from Earth, and from finding Xena. The marketplace assaulted Henry's senses. Stalls overflowed with exotic fruits, shimmering fabrics, and devices that defied description. Lyra watched with amusement as Henry's eyes darted from one marvel to the next. "You seem quite knowledgeable about alien cultures," she observed as Henry haggled with a six-armed merchant in its native tongue. Henry grinned, thinking of Xena's lessons. "I had an excellent teacher." As they moved deeper into the station, neither noticed the pair of yellow eyes tracking their movements from the shadows. Drazak, a sinewy reptilian with scales like polished obsidian, flicked his forked tongue. The human scent was distinctive, valuable. He activated his comm unit. "Target acquired. Prepare for extraction." Oblivious to the danger, Henry and Lyra arrived at the station's observatory. A vast window revealed a cosmic tapestry, stellar nurseries blooming amid swirling nebulae, their colors more vivid than any earthly sunset. "It's beautiful," Henry breathed, his hand unconsciously seeking Lyra's. She turned to him, her bioluminescent skin pulsing softly. Their eyes met, and Henry felt a familiar flutter in his chest. He leaned closer, drawn by an invisible force. A harsh beep shattered the moment. Lyra's communicator flashed urgently. "It's Vexilor," she said, her voice tight. "We need to get you to the security center immediately." They rushed through the corridors, the earlier tranquility replaced by a sense of impending danger. As they rounded a corner, a sizzling bolt of energy scorched the wall inches from Henry's head. "Get down!" Henry shouted, tackling Lyra as more shots filled the air. Adrenaline surged through him as he assessed the situation. 3 assailants, armed with plasma rifles, were advancing from the far end of the corridor. Civilians screamed and scattered, leaving them exposed. Henry's hand found a metal pipe dislodged in the chaos. In one fluid motion, he rolled to his feet and hurled it at the nearest attacker. The improvised projectile caught the mercenary in the chest, sending him sprawling. Lyra stared at Henry, wide-eyed. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Before he could answer, Vexilor's security team swarmed into the corridor, forcing the remaining attackers to retreat. In the confusion, Henry felt a sharp sting on his arm. He looked down to see a thin gash, already welling with blood. Lyra gently took his arm, examining the wound. "It's not deep, but we should treat it quickly." As she dressed the injury, Henry became acutely aware of her touch, her face inches from his. The tension between them crackled like static electricity. Vexilor's arrival broke the spell. "The station is no longer safe for you," he rumbled. "I've arranged transport to the Sol system. You'll leave immediately." As they hurried to the docking bay, Lyra spoke up. "I'm going with him. He'll need a guide, and I know the region better than anyone." Vexilor considered for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. Now go, quickly." Before boarding, Henry made one last request. Using Nexus 7's powerful transmitter, He sent an encoded message into the depths of space, hoping against hope that Xena would somehow receive it. As the sleek transport ship disengaged from the station, Henry and Lyra stood side by side on the observation deck. Nexus 7 dwindled behind them, a glittering oasis in the cosmic dark. Henry's mind raced. He was heading home at last, but leaving behind the only family he'd ever known. And now, with Lyra at his side, his heart was torn in yet another direction. Unbeknownst to them, a cloaked ship detached from Nexus 7's shadow, silently falling into pursuit. Admiral Crix allowed himself a cold smile. The human prince had evaded him once. It would not happen again. As the transport accelerated towards Earth, Henry braced himself for the challenges ahead. He was a prince returning to a world he'd never known, carrying the weight of two civilizations on his shoulders. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, Xena fought her own battles, never far from his thoughts. The ship's engines hummed, propelling them towards an uncertain future. Henry's journey was not nearly finished. The ship's engines hummed, propelling them towards an uncertain future. Henry's journey was not nearly over as the transport entered a vast, swirling expanse of ionized gas, the Cerulean Nebula. Lyra's fingers danced across the navigation controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We're entering a communications dead zone," she announced. "Long-range sensors are offline." Henry leaned forward, studying the mesmerizing blues and purples that filled the view screen. "How do we navigate through this?" "The old-fashioned way," Lyra replied, a hint of excitement in her voice. "Visual confirmation and short-range scans. It's going to be a bumpy ride." As if on cue, the ship lurched violently. Henry stumbled, colliding with Lyra. His arms instinctively wrapped around her to steady them both. For a moment, they stood pressed together, hearts racing from more than just the turbulence. Lyra's skin shimmered, her bioluminescence pulsing rapidly. "We should check for damage," she said softly, not moving from Henry's embrace. Reality reasserted itself as another tremor shook the ship. They sprang apart, moving efficiently to assess the systems. Henry found himself working seamlessly with Lyra, anticipating her needs as they rerouted power and stabilized the shields. "You're quite handy with alien tech," Lyra observed as Henry expertly recalibrated a fluctuating power coupling. He smiled, thinking of the countless hours spent studying with Xena. "I had a good teacher." As they worked, neither noticed the sleek Proximan scout ship gliding silently through the nebula's currents, closing the distance. On the bridge of the pursuing vessel, Lieutenant Zarek's scaled fingers tightened on the command chair. "Prepare the EMP," he ordered, yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. "We'll take them by surprise." Back on the transport, Henry and Lyra retreated to the observation lounge for a brief respite. The nebula's ethereal light played across Lyra's features, enhancing her otherworldly beauty. Henry found himself drawn to her, conflicting emotions swirling in his chest. "Tell me about Earth," Lyra said, breaking the charged silence. "What's it like, your home?" Henry's gaze turned distant. I don't really know. I've never actually been there." Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. Henry found himself opening up, sharing the story of his upbringing with Xena, his hopes for Earth, and his fears about the responsibilities awaiting him. Lyra listened intently, her hand finding his. "You won't be alone," she said softly. "I'll be with you, every step of the way." Their eyes met, and Henry felt himself leaning in. Lyra's luminescence intensified as their lips met in a passionate kiss. For a moment, the nebula, the mission, the entire universe faded away. A sudden tremor violently separated them. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness, broken only by the nebula's glow and Lyra's bioluminescence. "We've lost main power," Lyra exclaimed, already moving towards the exit. As they reached the corridor, artificial gravity failed. Henry found himself floating, momentarily disoriented. He quickly adapted, using his Iridian training to propel himself efficiently through the weightless environment. "Watch out," Henry called, pulling Lyra aside as a loose storage container hurtled past. They worked together, securing anything that could become a dangerous projectile. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the crew struggled to restore power. Through the viewports, Henry caught sight of a menacing shape emerging from the nebula's swirling gases. the Proximan scout ship. "They've found us," he said grimly, "and we're sitting ducks." Lyra's face set with dedication. "Not if I can help it. I have an idea, but it's risky." Henry listened as she outlined a daring plan to restart the engines manually from outside the ship. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it was their only chance. "I'm going with you," Henry said firmly as they donned protective suits. Lyra's expression was a mix of admiration and concern. "Henry, you don't have to—" He cut her off with a gentle touch. "We're in this together, remember?" As they prepared to exit the airlock, Henry's thoughts turned to Xena, to Earth, to the weight of his responsibilities. But as he met Lyra's gaze through their helmet visors, he knew that right now, in this moment, this was exactly where he needed to be. The airlock cycled, and they plunged into the swirling chaos of the Cerulean Nebula. Henry activated his suit's thrusters, following Lyra's lead as they navigated along the ship's hull. The Proximan vessel loomed closer, energy weapons charging. "Almost there?" Lyra's voice crackled through the comm. "The engine access panel is just ahead." As they reached their goal, a warning shot from the Proximan ship sizzled past, missing them by inches. Henry's heart raced as he worked to realign the power coupling, hyper-aware of Lyra's presence beside him and the imminent danger they faced. With a final adjustment, the engines roared to life. Henry and Lyra rushed back to the airlock, narrowly avoiding debris kicked up by the sudden ignition. As they tumbled back inside the ship, Henry found himself once again holding Lyra close, their helmets clinking together. "We did it," he breathed, grinning despite the danger. The ship's captain's voice came over the intercom. "Faster than light engines online. Proximon vessel on collision course. Your orders, Your Highness?" Henry's mind raced, weighing the risks. "Jump now," he commanded. "It's our only chance." The FTL drive engaged with a bone-shaking rumble. At the last second, the Proximan ship clipped their rear section. Alarms screamed as the transport hurtled into faster-than-light speed, leaving their pursuers behind but with critical damage to their life support systems. As the adrenaline of their near escape faded, Henry and Lyra found themselves facing a new crisis. Oxygen was leaking into space, with only 72 hours of breathable air remaining. "We'll never make it to Earth in time," Lyra said, her voice tight with worry. Henry's mind raced, recalling his lessons with Xena. "There's an Iridian outpost nearby," he said. "If we can reach it—" He trailed off, knowing that diverting course would delay his return to Earth and potentially alter the course of humanity's first official contact with alien life. But as he looked at Lyra and the frightened crew around him, he knew there was only one choice. "Set course for the Iridian outpost," Henry ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "We're going to make it through this, together." As the transport changed direction, racing against the dwindling oxygen supply, Henry felt the weight of leadership settle onto his shoulders. He thought of Xena, hoping she was safe, and of Earth, waiting unaware for his return. And beside him stood Lyra, a growing complication to his already complex destiny. With a deep breath of the precious remaining air, Henry squared his shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead in the race to reach the Iridian outpost, he would face them head-on. The true test of his ability to lead was just beginning. The true test of his ability to lead was just starting. As the transport ship hurtled through space, its life support systems failing rapidly. "Oxygen levels at 68% and dropping," Lyra announced, her fingers flying over the control panel. "We've got less than 72 hours before it becomes critical." Henry's mind raced, recalling his lessons with Xena. "There's an Iridian outpost nearby," he said, moving to the navigation console. "If we can reach it, we might be able to repair our systems." Lyra's bioluminescence flickered with concern. "Diverting to the outpost will delay our arrival on Earth." "We won't make it to Earth if we suffocate first," Henry replied grimly. He turned to the ship's captain. "Set a course for these coordinates." As the transport changed direction, Henry felt the weight of his decision. He was potentially altering the course of humanity's first official contact with alien life. But the lives of his crew had to come first. The next 48 hours were tense as they pushed the damaged ship to its limits. Henry and Lyra worked tirelessly alongside the crew, patching systems and rerouting power to maintain their dwindling life support. Finally, a massive shape loomed ahead, but it wasn't what they expected. "That's not an outpost," Lyra gasped. It's a space station." Hidden within a dense asteroid field, the ancient Iridian structure dwarfed their transport. As they approached, the station's automated defenses sprang to life, a swarm of energy beams lancing out towards them. "Evasive maneuvers," the captain shouted, but Henry held up his hand. "Wait," he said, moving to the communications array. His fingers danced across the unfamiliar controls as he input a complex series of symbols, a special access code Xena had taught him years ago, just in case. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, as if by magic, the defense grid powered down. "How did you do that?" Lyra asked, her eyes wide with awe. Henry managed a tired smile. "Let's just say I had a good teacher." They docked at the station without further incident, the airlock sealing with a reassuring hiss. As the boarding ramp extended, Henry turned to the crew. "Lyra and I will lead a team to explore the station," he said. "We need to find a way to replenish our life support systems. The rest of you, stay with the ship and continue repairs." The station's interior was a maze of dimly lit corridors and vast, echoing chambers. Only maintenance robots moved through the halls, their single-minded focus on preserving the station, a stark reminder of how long it had been abandoned. As they ventured deeper, Henry's Iridian training proved invaluable. He deciphered control panels and guided them past potential hazards, all while keeping an eye out for anything that could help their failing ship. After hours of searching, they stumbled upon a sight that took their breath away. A massive hydroponics bay stretched before them, filled with a riot of alien vegetation. The plants had grown wild over the centuries, creating a lush, jungle-like environment that pulsed with life. "This is incredible," Lyra breathed, reaching out to touch a luminescent leaf. Henry nodded, recognizing several species from Xena's lessons. "And it might just save our lives. Some of these plants are incredibly efficient at producing oxygen. If we can harvest enough, we should be able to repair our life support systems." They set to work immediately, carefully selecting and gathering the most useful specimens. The humid atmosphere and physical exertion soon had them both sweating, and they shed layers of their protective gear. As they worked side by side in a secluded corner of the bay, Henry became acutely aware of Lyra's proximity. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescence, highlighting the graceful lines of her body. Their eyes met, and the tension that had been building between them since their kiss in the nebula suddenly ignited. Without a word, they came together in a passionate embrace. Their kisses were urgent, fueled by the fear and adrenaline of their ordeal. They sank down onto the soft, moss-like ground, giving in to their desires among the alien foliage. Afterward, they lay entwined, the reality of their situation slowly reasserting itself. Henry felt a mixture of exhilaration and guilt, knowing that their encounter complicated an already complex situation. "We should get back to work," Lyra said softly, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. Henry nodded, pushing aside his conflicted emotions. They had a mission to complete. With their arms full of carefully selected plants, they made their way back to the transport. The crew set to work immediately, integrating the alien flora into their life support systems. Slowly but surely, oxygen levels began to rise. As the repairs neared completion, a low hum filled the station. Lights flickered to life in long-dormant systems, and a holographic image materialized in the center of the docking bay. An Iridian scientist, her features noble and ancient, gazed at them with piercing eyes. "Welcome, visitors, to Research Station Omega. If you are viewing this message, then our greatest hopes and fears have been realized." Henry and Lyra exchanged glances as the hologram continued. This facility was dedicated to the development of a revolutionary terraforming technology, a power capable of reshaping entire worlds in a matter of days. But the potential for its misuse as a weapon of unimaginable destruction led to the project's abandonment. The hologram gestured, and a database interface flickered to life nearby. "Contained within is all of our research. Use it wisely, for in the wrong hands, it could bring about the end of worlds." Henry's mind raced with the implications. Such technology could save Earth, transform barren planets into havens of life. It might even help Xena and her people. Without hesitation, he began the download process. As the data streamed into their systems, alarms blared throughout the station. The hologram's expression turned grave. A fail-safe has been triggered. This facility will self-destruct to prevent the misuse of our research. May the stars guide you to wisdom. The image vanished, leaving them in chaos. "Back to the ship!" Henry shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand as they ran. The station groaned and shuddered around them, rocked by internal explosions. They reached the transport just as the docking clamps released, nearly sending them tumbling into space. Henry took the controls, his recent piloting lessons put to the ultimate test. He guided the ship through the disintegrating station, weaving between massive chunks of debris and navigating the treacherous asteroid field beyond. As they cleared the blast radius, adrenaline still pumping, their sensors detected an incoming vessel. Henry's heart leapt as he recognized the signature. It was the Zenith, Xena's ship. They docked in the calm of open space, and moments later, Xena strode onto their bridge. Her eyes locked with Henry's, a universe of emotion passing between them in that silent moment. "I followed your distress signal," Xena said, her voice thick with relief. "I thought I'd lost you." Before Henry could respond, an urgent transmission cut through the air. The image of a harried Earth official appeared on their view screen. "This is an emergency broadcast to all off-world personnel. A Proximan advanced fleet has entered the solar system, demanding Earth surrender. We need help. We need our prince." The official's eyes seemed to bore into Henry. "If you're out there, Your Highness, please, come home." The transmission cut out, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Henry looked from Xena to Lyra, feeling the weight of his duty and his conflicted heart. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, now rested on his shoulders. "Set a course for Earth," he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Maximum speed." As the ships accelerated towards humanity's homeworld, Henry's mind whirled with possibilities. The terraforming technology they'd discovered could be the key to defeating the Proximan threat, or it could spell disaster if misused. With Earth growing ever closer, Henry steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He was a prince returning to a world under siege, caught between two women who had captured his heart and carrying technology that could reshape the galaxy. The true test of his leadership was about to begin. As their ships hurtled toward Earth, the gravity of the situation became painfully clear. The Proximan advance fleet loomed ahead, a dark barrier between them and humanity's homeworld. "Sensors are picking up multiple hostiles," Lyra reported, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "It's Admiral Crix's armada." Henry's eyes hardened as he surveyed the tactical display. Earth's military forces were vastly outgunned, their ships looking like mere toys compared to the massive Proximan vessels. "We need to act fast," Xena said, her voice tight with urgency. "The Iridian data might be our only chance." They gathered in the transport ship's command center, poring over the terraforming technology they'd acquired. Henry's mind raced as he sifted through the complex formulae and schematics. "Here," he said suddenly, pointing to a section of the data, "we can use this to create localized atmospheric disturbances. If we can target the Proximan ships, we could disable them without damaging Earth," Lyra finished, her eyes lighting up. As they worked to implement the plan, Henry found himself acutely aware of both Xena and Lyra. The small space forced them into close proximity, and every accidental touch sent a jolt through his body. He caught Xena's eyes lingering on him, filled with a mixture of pride and longing. Moments later, Lyra's hand brushed his as they reached for the same console, and the spark between them was undeniable. A priority transmission cut through the tension. "Unidentified vessels, this is Earth Command. State your intentions." Henry took a deep breath, knowing it was time. He opened a secure channel and spoke clearly. "This is Prince Henry Reginald, rightful heir to the Earth's throne. I've returned to defend our world." The response was immediate. Cheers erupted over the comm system as the news spread rapidly across Earth's remaining defenses. But their celebration was short-lived. Incoming! Xena shouted as the Proximan fleet unleashed a barrage of energy weapons. Henry gripped the controls, his recent piloting lessons put to the ultimate test as he maneuvered the transport ship through the deadly onslaught. Beside him, Xena's Zenith danced gracefully through space, its superior technology allowing it to evade the worst of the attack. "Now's our chance," Henry called out. "Lyra, activate the atmospheric disruptor." Lyra input the final commands, and a beam of energy shot out from their ship. It struck a cluster of Proximan vessels, enveloping them in a shimmering field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one by one, the enemy ships began to drift, their systems overloaded by the sudden atmospheric change. "It's working!" Lyra exclaimed. Encouraged, Henry expanded the effect, targeting larger groups of Proximan ships. The transport ship groaned under the strain, alarms blaring as systems were pushed to their limits. "The core is overheating," Xena reported from the engine room, her voice barely audible over the noise. "We can't maintain this output for long." Henry gritted his teeth, knowing they had to press their advantage. Earth's military, seizing the opportunity, launched a counteroffensive against the disabled Proximan ships. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell over them. Admiral Crix's flagship had broken through the defensive line, bearing down on Henry's transport with terrifying speed. Time seemed to slow as Henry weighed his options. The transport ship was no match for the Proximan flagship in direct combat. There was only one choice. "Hold on!" he shouted, pushing the ship's engines to their maximum. They rocketed towards Crix's vessel on a collision course. "Henry, what are you doing?" Lyra cried out. "Trust me," he replied, his hands steady on the controls. At the last possible second, Henry activated the Iridian technology at full power. A blinding surge of energy engulfed both ships. The Proximan flagship went dark, drifting lifelessly in space. But the victory came at a cost. Henry's transport shuddered violently, explosions ripping through its hull. "We've lost main power," Xena reported, her voice strained. "Life support is failing." "To the escape pods," Henry ordered, already moving. They raced through the disintegrating ship, the floor buckling beneath their feet. As they reached the pods, Henry hesitated for a split second, looking between Xena and Lyra. Both women met his gaze, understanding and something more complex passing between them. There was no time for words. They piled into the nearest pod, their bodies pressed tightly together in the cramped space. Henry's heart raced, not just from the danger, but from the intense proximity to both Xena and Lyra. The pod ejected with a violent jerk, spinning away from the dying transport ship. Through the small viewport, they watched as the space battle continued to rage. Earth's forces, bolstered by the disabled Proximan ships, were turning the tide. Their moment of relief was short-lived. The pod shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere, the heat shield straining against the friction. Henry held onto Xena and Lyra, their arms intertwined in a desperate embrace. "Brace for impact!" Henry shouted as the ground rushed up to meet them. The pod slammed into a dense forest, skidding and bouncing, before coming to a sudden jarring stop. The impact knocked them unconscious, their bodies tangled together in the wreckage. Henry awoke to the sound of birds chirping and sunlight filtering through the cracked viewport. He was sandwiched between Xena and Lyra, their warm bodies pressed against him. For a moment he lay still, savoring their closeness and the simple fact that they were alive. Reality soon reasserted itself. Henry carefully checked on Xena and Lyra, relief washing over him as he confirmed they were both breathing and largely unharmed. As he gently roused them, their eyes met his, filled with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and unpurposed tension. Extricating themselves from the twisted metal of the escape pod, they emerged into a lush forest. The quiet was a stark contrast to the chaos they'd just escaped. In the distance, they could see plumes of smoke rising from other impact sites, remnants of the space battle that had raged above. Henry helped Xena and Lyra from the wreckage, his touch lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. As they stood together on Earth's soil, the weight of what they'd accomplished and what still lay ahead settled over them. The immediate Proximan threat had been thwarted, but Henry knew this was only the beginning. He had a planet to defend, advanced technology to integrate, and his rightful place as Earth's prince to reclaim. And then there was the matter of his heart, torn between the wise, enigmatic Xena and the passionate, captivating Lyra. As they set off through the forest in search of civilization, Henry's mind raced with the challenges ahead. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the complex web of his personal relationships had only grown more tangled. Whatever trials awaited him, Henry knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, Henry stirred, his body aching from the impact. He blinked, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. The dense forest around them was a far cry from the sterile environment of the space station, or the vast emptiness of space. "Xena! Lyra!" he called out, his voice hoarse. "Here," Xena replied, emerging from behind a twisted piece of metal. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, leaves and twigs caught in her silvery hair. Lyra groaned, pushing herself up from the forest floor. "I've had smoother landings," she quipped, wincing as she stretched. Henry helped them both to their feet, his hands lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. The physical contact sent a jolt through him, a reminder of their shared ordeal and the complex emotions swirling between them. "We need to assess our situation," Henry said, slipping into the role of leader. His royal upbringing and Iridian education kicked in, providing a sense of direction in the chaos. They scoured the wreckage, salvaging what little they could. Xena's alien survival skills proved invaluable as she quickly fashioned a water collection system from the pod's debris. Lyra, drawing on her own off-world experiences, identified several edible plants growing nearby. As they worked, Henry couldn't help but marvel at their resourcefulness. "I'm glad you're both here," he said softly. "I'm not sure I could do this alone." Xena and Lyra exchanged a look, a mixture of affection and something more complex passing between them. "We're in this together," Lyra assured him, placing a hand on his arm. Xena nodded in agreement. "Now, let's find our way back to civilization." They set off through the forest, the terrain challenging their commitment with every step. Thick underbrush snagged at their clothes, and hidden roots threatened to trip them. As they navigated a particularly treacherous slope, Henry lost his footing. Xena's quick reflexes saved him from a nasty fall. She caught him, pulling him close. For a moment they stood there, bodies pressed together, hearts racing from more than just exertion. "Thank you," Henry breathed, acutely aware of her proximity. Lyra watched the exchange, her expression unreadable. As they continued their journey, the dynamics between the trio shifted subtly. Casual touches lingered, glances held for a beat too long. The shared adversity was bringing them closer in ways none of them had anticipated. As the day wore on, they encountered signs of the recent conflict. A clearing revealed a panoramic view of the surrounding area, smoke still rising from distant impact sites. The sight sobered them, a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. "Look," Lyra said suddenly, pointing to a column of smoke rising from the forest to the east. "That could be survivors." They altered their course, approaching the potential settlement with caution. As they neared, they heard voices, human voices. Henry's heart raced. After so long in space, the prospect of encountering his own people filled him with a mix of excitement and apprehension. They emerged from the tree line to find a makeshift camp, a group of haggard-looking humans huddled around a fire, their faces etched with weariness and fear. The survivors froze at the sight of them, eyes widening at Xena and Lyra's alien features. "Wait," one of the men said, squinting at Henry. "I know that face. It's the prince." A murmur rippled through the group. Henry stepped forward, drawing himself up to his full height. "I am Prince Henry Reginald," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of his royal lineage. "We've come to help." The reaction was immediate. Some fell to their knees, while others surged forward, desperate to touch the returned heir. Henry raised his hands, calling for calm. "Please," he said, "there's no need for formalities. We're all in this together." As the initial shock wore off, wariness returned to some faces as they eyed Xena and Lyra. Henry quickly introduced his companions, emphasizing their crucial role in the recent victory against the Proximans. An older woman, who seemed to be the group's leader, approached them. "Your Highness," she said, bowing slightly. "I'm Elena. We're all that's left of Millbrook. The Proximan attack." Her voice trailed off, heavy with loss. Henry's heart ached for their suffering. He placed a comforting hand on Elena's shoulder, keenly aware of the responsibility that now rested on him. "We'll rebuild," he promised. "Together, we'll create a stronger Earth, one that stands as an equal among the stars." As night fell, they shared a meal with the survivors, exchanging stories and information. Henry learned of the global search for him, the media frenzy surrounding his return, and the enormous task of reconstruction that lay ahead. Xena and Lyra, initially regarded with suspicion, soon won over the group with their knowledge and willingness to help. Henry watched with pride as they taught the survivors alien techniques for purifying water and treating injuries. Later, as the camp settled for the night, Henry found himself unable to sleep. He wandered to the edge of the clearing, gazing up at the star-filled sky. So much had changed in so little time. He sensed movement behind him and turned to find Xena and Lyra approaching. They stood on either side of him, their presence a comfort in the face of the uncertain future. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked softly. Henry sighed. "About everything that needs to be done, rebuilding Earth, establishing peaceful relations with other races, my duties as prince." He trailed off, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Xena took his hand, her touch sending a warmth through him. "You won't face it alone," she said. Lyra nodded, taking his other hand. "We're with you, every step of the way." The three of them stood there, hands linked, a united front against the challenges ahead. As Henry looked at Xena and Lyra, he felt a surge of emotion. The bond between them had grown into something powerful, something that transcended the boundaries of their different worlds. A twig snapped in the forest behind them, breaking the moment. They turned, alert to potential danger. Henry's mind raced with possibilities: Earth's military forces, Proxima stragglers, or perhaps something else entirely. Whatever approached, Henry knew one thing for certain. Together they could face anything the universe threw at them. Them. Henry instinctively moved to shield Xena and Lyra, his body tense as he peered into the darkness. A beam of light cut through the forest, followed by the sound of heavy boots crunching leaves. Henry squinted against the glare, his heart racing as he recognized the uniforms of Earth's military forces emerging from the tree line. "Prince Henry," a voice called out, "we've been searching for you." Relief washed over Henry, quickly followed by a new wave of tension. He glanced at Xena and Lyra, their faces a mix of apprehension and resignation. They all knew this moment would come, but the reality of it was jarring after their shared ordeal. "I'm here," Henry responded, stepping forward. "These are my companions, Xena and Lyra. They've been instrumental in our victory against the Proximans." The soldiers approached cautiously, their eyes darting between Henry and the two aliens. A high-ranking officer stepped forward, saluting crisply. "Your Highness, we're here to escort you to a secure facility. The world has been waiting for your return." Henry nodded, his throat tight. "Of course, but Xena and Lyra come with me. We stay together." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, sir. This way, please." As they were led through the forest to waiting vehicles, Henry felt the warmth of Xena's hand slip into his. Lyra pressed close on his other side, their bodies forming a united front. The comfort of their presence steeled him for what lay ahead. The journey to the secure facility was a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. Upon arrival, they were whisked into a sterile building, the stark contrast to the forest they'd left behind disorienting. "We need to debrief you separately," an official informed them, her tone brooking no argument. Henry opened his mouth to protest, but Xena squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she murmured. "We'll be fine." Lyra nodded in agreement, though her eyes betrayed her unease. "We'll see you soon, Henry." As they were led away, Henry felt a profound sense of loss. He watched them disappear down separate corridors, his heart aching at the separation after their intense shared experiences. Henry was escorted to a high-security bunker deep within the facility. The room buzzed with activity as top government officials and military leaders gathered around him. Screens displayed maps of Earth, some areas marked with ominous red indicators of Proximan attacks. "Prince Henry," a stern-faced woman in a crisp suit addressed him. "I'm Director Elaine Hawthorne. We need to know everything about the Proximan threat and this Iridian technology you've brought back. Henry took a deep breath, centering himself. He began to speak, his voice growing stronger as he shared his extraordinary story. He described the Proximan's brutal tactics, the advanced Iridian technology, and his own unique upbringing that bridged two worlds. We have an opportunity, Henry emphasized, his eyes sweeping the room, to not just rebuild, but to leap forward. The Iridian terraforming technology can repair the damage caused by the Proximan attack. More importantly, we need to integrate Earth into the galactic community. His words were met with a mix of awe and skepticism. The officials exchanged glances, struggling to grasp the implications of Henry's revelations. This is a lot to process, Director Hawthorne said, her brow furrowed. You're proposing we use alien technology to reshape our planet? Henry nodded firmly. It's not just about repairing damage. It's about preparing Earth for a future among the stars. As the discussions continued, Henry's thoughts kept drifting to Xena and Lyra. He wondered how they were faring, hoping they weren't being treated with suspicion or fear. In another part of the facility, Xena and Lyra were undergoing thorough medical examinations. Scientists hovered around them, fascinated by their alien physiology. Remarkable, a doctor muttered, studying a scan of Xena's internal structure. The adaptations for low-gravity environments are incredible. Lyra winced as a needle pierced her skin for yet another blood sample. Is all this really necessary? She asked, her patience wearing thin. The scientist nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes, the potential medical advancements from studying your biology are immense. Both aliens endured the scrutiny, holding on to the hope that their cooperation would lead to a reunion with Henry and support for his mission. Days passed in a whirlwind of debriefings and examinations. Henry found himself thrust into the global spotlight, addressing the world in a televised broadcast. He stood before the cameras, his royal upbringing evident in his poised demeanor. People of Earth, he began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. My journey has been long and extraordinary, but I stand before you today with hope for our future. As Henry shared his vision for Earth's place among the stars, he could almost feel the world holding its breath. His charisma and unique perspective captivated millions, but he was acutely aware of the criticism from those wary of alien influence. The broadcast concluded, but Henry's work was far from finished. He dove into meetings and planning sessions, working tirelessly to implement the use of Iridian terraforming technology for Earth's recovery efforts. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Xena and Lyra were finally allowed to rejoin him. Henry's heart leapt at the sight of them, but the joy of reunion was tempered by the constant surveillance and the weight of their new roles. As they huddled over holographic displays of damaged ecosystems, Henry couldn't help but notice the tension in Xena's shoulders, the tightness around Lyra's eyes. Their shared glances spoke volumes about the strain of their separation and the pressure they now faced. The Iridian terraforming algorithms need to be adjusted for Earth's specific magnetic field, Xena explained, her fingers dancing over the controls. Lyra nodded in agreement. We'll need to account for the higher gravity as well. The energy distribution will be different here. Henry watched them work, marveling at their knowledge and adaptability. Their collaboration sparked something within him, reigniting the passion that had been dampened by days of bureaucratic meetings. As they worked late into the night, the trio found themselves drawn closer together, a brush of hands as they reached for the same control panel, a shared smile of triumph as a simulation yielded positive results. The air between them crackled with untenacity tension, both professional and personal. Just as they were making significant progress, an alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed and a voice came over the intercom system. Alert! Multiple objects detected entering the solar system. Preliminary analysis suggests Proximan signatures. Henry's blood ran cold. He exchanged a look of horror with Xena and Lyra. Their moment of hope was shattered by the looming threat of another Proximan invasion. As chaos erupted around them, Henry steeled himself for the challenge ahead. With Xena and Lyra by his side, he prepared to face this new threat and defend the planet he had only just returned to. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the true test of their unity was about to begin. Begin. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the true test of their unity was about to unfold. Alarms blared throughout the facility as personnel rushed to their stations. Henry, Xena, and Lyra exchanged determined glances before springing into action. They raced to the control center, where a massive holographic display showed the approaching Proximan fleet. "How did they regroup so quickly?" Henry muttered, his eyes scanning the tactical readouts. Xena's fingers flew over the console. "They must have had reinforcements waiting beyond our long-range sensors." "We need to activate the planetary shield," Lyra urged, her voice tight with urgency. Henry nodded, keying in his authorization code. "Initiating shield activation sequence now." The trio watched with suspenseful pause as the massive energy barrier flickered to life around the planet. From their vantage point in the control center, they could see the shimmering dome envelop Earth, visible even from space. As the first wave of Proximan ships made contact with the shield, Henry felt a surge of hope. The barrier held firm, deflecting the enemy's energy weapons in a dazzling display of light. Their relief was short-lived. A new alert flashed across the screens, accompanied by a wave of panicked chatter from the technicians around them. "What's happening?" Henry demanded, leaning over a nearby operator's shoulder. The technician's face was pale. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy buildup in the Proximan fleet. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Xena's eyes widened in recognition. "It's Admiral Crix. He's anticipated our defenses." Before they could react, a blinding pulse of energy erupted from the Proximan flagship. The electromagnetic surge struck the planetary shield, causing it to fluctuate dangerously. Sparks flew from consoles around the room as systems overloaded. "Shield integrity dropping," Lyra shouted over the chaos. "We can't sustain this level of attack." Henry's mind raced. They needed a new strategy, and fast. His eyes fell on the holographic display of the Iridian terraforming technology they had been working on. An idea began to form. "We can use the terraforming tech," he said, his voice rising with excitement. "Not just for rebuilding, but for defense. We can create a network of orbital platforms to generate localized shields and counterattack the Proximan fleet." Xena and Lyra exchanged looks of surprise, quickly followed by understanding. "It's risky," Xena said, "but it might be our only chance." Lyra nodded in agreement. "We'll need to modify the devices quickly. The strain on Earth's resources will be immense." Henry turned to the room full of anxious faces. "This is our best shot at survival. I need everyone's full cooperation. We're launching immediately." As Earth's military engaged the Proximan forces, breaching the weakening planetary shield, Henry led his team in a race against time. They worked feverishly to modify the terraforming devices, adapting them for their new purpose. Within hours, they were ready. Henry, Xena, and Lyra boarded a specially designed spacecraft, its hold filled with the modified terraforming devices. As they strapped themselves in, Henry couldn't help but feel a mix of persistence and fear. "We've got one shot at this," he said, his hands gripping the controls tightly. Xena placed her hand over his. "We're with you, Henry. All the way." The spacecraft shuddered as it lifted off, accelerating rapidly through the atmosphere. As they broke through the weakening planetary shield, the true scale of the battle became apparent. The space around Earth was a chaotic maelstrom of energy weapons and explosions. Henry expertly piloted the ship through the debris field, dodging Proximan fire as they made their way to the first deployment point. Xena and Lyra worked in perfect sync, preparing the first platform for launch. "Now!" Henry shouted as they reached the designated coordinates. With a hiss of pneumatics, the first platform deployed. It immediately began to unfold, its energy core pulsing with power. A localized shield sprung to life, protecting a key area on Earth's surface. "It's working," Lyra exclaimed, her eyes fixed on the readouts. But their celebration was short-lived. A new wave of Proximan ships appeared on their sensors, heading straight for them. "They've spotted us," Xena warned, her voice tense. Henry gritted his teeth, pushing the ship's engines to their limit. "Hold on tight. This is where it gets interesting." As they raced to deploy the remaining platforms, a fierce space battle erupted around them. Henry's piloting skills were put to the test as he weaved through a barrage of Proximan fire. The ship shuddered with each near miss, systems blaring warnings. Xena and Lyra worked tirelessly, launching platform after platform. Each successful deployment brought a small victory, but the Proximan onslaught was relentless. A direct hit rocked the ship, sending sparks flying from the control panel. Warning lights flashed red as life support systems began to fail. "We're losing power," Lyra shouted over the blaring alarms. Henry's mind raced. They still had one terraforming device left, but no time to deploy it properly. In a split-second decision, he made a choice that would change everything. "We're going to use the last device on our ship," he announced, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It's our only chance to buy some time." Xena and Lyra looked at him in shock, but quickly moved to help. As they worked to activate the device, the ship's internal environment began to change. The air shimmered with energy, and Henry felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. The device's activation had an unexpected side effect. As the terraforming energy suffused the ship, Henry found his senses heightening. He could feel the vibrations of the ship more acutely, smell the ozone from overloaded circuits, and most strikingly, he became hyper-aware of Xena and Lyra's presence. A glance at his companions confirmed they were experiencing similar changes. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the intensity of their shared experiences and emotions threatened to overwhelm them. But there was no time to explore these new sensations. The Proximan fleet was closing in, led by Admiral Crix's imposing flagship. Henry knew they needed to act fast. With a deep breath, he made the most daring decision of his life. "We're going to take out Crix's ship," he declared, plotting a collision course. Xena and Lyra didn't hesitate. They moved to his side, their bodies pressed close in the cramped cockpit. The physical proximity sent shockwaves through Henry, but he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. As they approached the Proximan flagship, time seemed to slow. Henry reached out, his hands finding Xena and Lyra's. In that brief moment of connection, a lifetime of emotions passed between them. "Whatever happens," Henry said softly, "I'm glad we're together." With a shared nod of willpower, they activated the terraforming device at full power. The resulting energy surge engulfed both ships in a blinding light. Henry felt the ship breaking apart around them, the forces of the spatial distortion tearing at the very fabric of space. The last thing Henry saw before losing consciousness was Xena and Lyra being pulled away from him, their outstretched hands just beyond his reach. As darkness claimed him, he could only hope that their sacrifice would be enough to save Earth and reshape the future of humanity among the stars. Drifting in the void, Henry's unconscious form floated amidst the debris of the destroyed ships. The modified terraforming energy coursed through his body, its effects yet unknown. As the battle raged on around Earth, the fate of Henry, Xena, and Lyra hung in the balance, their destinies now irrevocably intertwined with the cosmic forces they had unleashed. As the cosmic energies dissipated, Henry's unconscious form drifted through the debris field, carried by the momentum of the explosion. Xena and Lyra, separated from him in the chaos, floated nearby, their bodies equally still. Days passed as Earth's defense forces regrouped and began to assess the aftermath of the battle. The modified terraforming technology had left a unique energy signature in space, complicating search efforts. It wasn't until a week after the confrontation that a faint distress signal was detected, emanating from a remote asteroid in the outer solar system. A specialized rescue team, equipped with advanced scanners and life support systems, set out to investigate. As they approached the asteroid, their instruments began to malfunction, affected by the residual terraforming energy. "I'm picking up some strange readings," the pilot announced, frowning at her console. "It's like the asteroid is changing." The team watched in awe as they drew closer. The barren rock had been partially transformed, its surface now dotted with patches of vegetation and small bodies of water. A thin atmosphere shimmered around it, defying the vacuum of space. As they landed and exited their craft, the rescue team moved cautiously through the alien landscape. In the center of the transformed area, they found what they were looking for. Henry, Xena, and Lyra lay unconscious but alive, their bodies nestled in a bed of soft, luminescent moss. "We've found them," the team leader called into his comm unit. "Prepare for immediate evacuation and medical attention." The trio was carefully loaded onto the rescue ship and rushed back to Earth. As they approached their home planet, The rescue team noticed subtle changes in their passengers. Henry's skin seemed to heal minor scrapes and bruises before their eyes. Zena's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with newfound intensity, shifting colors in response to her unconscious state. Lyra's iridescent skin took on a chameleon-like quality, subtly changing to match the surfaces she touched. Upon landing, a crowd of officials, medical personnel, and curious onlookers had gathered. The unconscious heroes were quickly whisked away to a high-security medical facility, where a team of Earth's top doctors and scientists awaited them. As hours turned into days, Henry, Zena, and Lyra remained in a comatose state. Monitoring equipment beeped steadily, recording their vital signs and the unusual changes in their physiology. Doctors huddled around screens, analyzing data and discussing theories in hushed tones. On the fifth day, Henry's eyes flickered open. He gasped, sitting up abruptly and looking around in confusion. "Zena, Lyra," he called out, his voice hoarse from disuse. A nurse rushed to his side, trying to calm him. "They're here. They're safe," she assured him, gesturing to the adjacent beds where Zena and Lyra lay. As if responding to his voice, both aliens began to stir. Zena's skin flashed a brilliant blue as her eyes opened, while Lyra's form shimmered, briefly blending with the white sheets before stabilizing. The room erupted into a flurry of activity as medical staff swarmed around them, checking vital signs and asking questions. Henry tried to stand but found his legs unsteady. He marveled at the strength he felt coursing through his body, despite the weakness from days of inactivity. "What happened?" he asked, his eyes darting between Zena and Lyra. "The last thing I remember." Before he could finish, a familiar sensation washed over him. It was as if he could feel Zena and Lyra's presence in his mind, their thoughts and emotions intertwining with his own. Their eyes met, and in that moment they shared a flood of memories and sensations from their ordeal. Their silent communion was interrupted by the arrival of a stern-looking government official flanked by security personnel. "Henry," the man said, his voice tight with nearly unleashed tension, "I'm glad to see you've recovered. However, I'm afraid I have to inform you that you and your companions are to remain under quarantine until further notice." Henry opened his mouth to protest, but the official raised a hand to silence him. "This is non-negotiable. The changes you've undergone need to be studied and understood before we can allow you to interact with the general population." As the implications of their situation sank in, Henry exchanged worried glances with Zena and Lyra. Their newfound mental connection buzzed with shared anxiety and uncertainty. Outside the facility, news of their return had spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered, their opinions sharply divided. Some held signs praising Henry as Earth's savior, while others demanded the aliens be sent back to space. The seed of conflict had been planted, and as Henry, Zena, and Lyra began their recovery under watchful eyes, they knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. In the coming days, they would have to navigate not only their changed bodies and deepened relationship, but also a world that had been forever altered by their actions. The defeat of the Proximan threat had opened up new possibilities and new dangers for Earth, and they found themselves at the center of it all. As night fell on their first day of consciousness, Henry lay awake in his hospital bed, his mind racing. Through their mental link, he could sense Zena and Lyra's restlessness as well. They were together again, yet separated by the sterile barriers of their quarantine rooms. Whatever came next, Henry knew that their bond would be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. As the night deepened, Henry's thoughts turned to the challenges that lay ahead. The world outside their quarantine had changed dramatically, and they would need to adapt quickly. The next few weeks passed in a blur of medical tests, debriefings, and carefully controlled interactions. As their strength returned, Henry, Zena, and Lyra found their unique abilities growing stronger and more refined. Their mental connection deepened, allowing them to communicate without words and anticipate each other's needs. Despite the government's efforts to keep their return under wraps, news of their survival and transformation leaked to the public. The response was immediate and polarizing. While many hailed them as heroes who had saved Earth from the Proximan threat, others viewed them with suspicion and fear. It was during this tumultuous time that Henry received an unexpected visitor. Admiral Chen, his former commanding officer, arrived at the facility with a proposal that would change everything. "We need your help, Henry," Chen said, his face grim. "The defeat of the Proximans has opened up new opportunities for Earth, but it's also exposed us to new threats. We're pushing forward with the construction of an interstellar space station, and we want you, Xena, and Lyra to oversee its completion." Henry leaned forward, intrigued. "A space station? What's its purpose?" "It's called Harmony," Chen explained. "It's designed to be a neutral meeting ground for various alien species, a place where we can foster diplomacy and scientific exchange. Your experience with alien cultures and your unique abilities make you the perfect candidates to lead this project." Henry glanced at Xena and Lyra, sensing their excitement through their mental link. He nodded. "We're in." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Released from quarantine under strict conditions, Henry, Xena, and Lyra threw themselves into the work of completing Harmony Station. Their enhanced abilities proved invaluable as they integrated advanced Iridian technology with human engineering, creating a self-sustaining environment capable of supporting diverse life forms. However, as construction neared its final stages, a new threat emerged. Victor Kane, a charismatic politician, began gaining popularity with his Earth First movement. Kane's rhetoric played on people's fears of alien influence, and his followers grew increasingly bold in their actions against off-world visitors. One evening, as Henry reviewed security protocols in his quarters on Harmony, Xena burst in, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with alarm. "Henry, there's been an attack," she said, her voice tense. "Kane's supporters bombed the Iridian embassy in New York." Henry's stomach dropped. He quickly accessed the station's communication array, connecting with Earth's emergency channels. The news was grim. The bombing was just one of several coordinated attacks on alien facilities across the globe. Lyra joined them moments later, her iridescent skin shifting nervously. "This is bad," she said, her eyes fixed on the incoming reports. "If this continues, it could derail everything we've worked for." Henry paced the room, his mind racing. Suddenly an idea struck him. He turned to his companions, a determined glint in his eye. "We need to show people the benefits of interstellar cooperation," he said. "What if we host a grand opening ceremony for Harmony? Invite representatives from all the major galactic powers. Make it a showcase of unity and progress." Xena's skin pulsed with excitement. "It's risky, but it could work. A demonstration of Earth's commitment to the galactic community?" Lyra nodded, her form shimmering as she considered the implications. "We'll need to enhance security measures. Kane's followers will see this as a prime target." As they began planning the event, their telepathic bond hummed with shared purpose. They worked tirelessly, coordinating with Earth government and reaching out to alien dignitaries. Their unique abilities allowed them to navigate the complex web of interstellar politics with unprecedented efficiency. Days before the ceremony, as they fine-tuned the station's life support systems, an unexpected transmission came through. A previously unknown alien race called the Syntherians had picked up news of the event and requested permission to attend. "What do you think?" Henry asked, looking at Xena and Lyra. Xena's patterns swirled thoughtfully. "Their technology seems incredibly advanced. Having them here could be a significant boost to the station's credibility." Lyra, however, seemed uneasy. "Something feels off about this. Why haven't we heard of them before?" Despite Lyra's reservations, they decided to grant the Syntherians permission to attend. As the day of the ceremony approached, the station buzzed with activity. Alien dignitaries began arriving, each bringing their own unique needs and customs. Henry, Xena, and Lyra found themselves stretched thin, managing logistics, maintaining diplomatic relations, and staying vigilant against potential security threats. Their enhanced senses and telepathic bond proved invaluable as they coordinated their efforts across the vast station. The night before the ceremony, as they conducted a final security sweep, Henry's heightened awareness picked up an anomaly in the power grid. Following the disturbance, they discovered a group of Earth First extremists attempting to plant explosives in critical areas. Without hesitation, the trio sprang into action. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, their unique abilities complementing each other as they engaged the saboteurs. Henry's enhanced strength and reflexes allowed him to disarm several attackers, while Xena's bioluminescent pulses disoriented others. Lyra's chameleon-like abilities gave her the element of surprise, allowing her to flank and subdue the remaining threats. In the aftermath of the thwarted attack, Earth government granted Henry emergency powers to ensure the ceremony's success. With this new authority, he implemented additional security measures and accelerated the final preparations. As the opening ceremony began, the Grand Central Chamber of Harmony Station filled with representatives from dozens of alien races. The atmosphere crackled with tension and anticipation. Henry stood at the podium, Xena and Lyra flanking him, ready to address the assembled dignitaries and usher in a new era of interstellar cooperation. But just as Henry began to speak, alarms blared throughout the station. The Syntherian ship, granted special docking privileges due to their late arrival, suddenly breached the station's outer hull. Chaos erupted as the true nature of the Syntherians revealed itself. Henry locked eyes with Xena and Lyra, their mental link buzzing with shared perseverance. As panic spread through the crowd of dignitaries, the trio moved as one, ready to face this new threat and fight for the future they had worked so hard to build. Create. As panic spread through the crowd of dignitaries, the trio moved as one, ready to face this new threat and fight for the future they had worked so hard to build. The Syntherian ship tore through the station's outer hull, causing a violent decompression that threatened to suck everything into the vacuum of space. Henry's enhanced reflexes kicked in as he grabbed onto a nearby support beam, reaching out to snatch Xena and Lyra from the pull of the breach. Their mental link buzzed with shared focus and dedication as they assessed the situation. "We need to seal off this section," Henry shouted over the roar of escaping air. Xena's bioluminescent patterns flashed in agreement, and Lyra's form shimmered as she adapted to the changing pressure. With a burst of strength, Henry pulled himself and his companions towards the emergency bulkhead controls. His fingers flew over the panel, initiating the station's containment protocols. Massive doors slammed shut, cutting off the compromised areas and stabilizing the atmosphere. As alarms blared throughout Harmony, the trio sprang into action. Their telepathic bond allowed them to coordinate their efforts seamlessly as they began evacuating the alien dignitaries to safe zones within the station. "Xena, use your bioluminescence to guide the evacuees," Henry called out. Xena nodded, her skin pulsing with bright directional patterns that cut through the chaos and smoke. Lyra's chameleonic abilities proved invaluable as she blended with her surroundings, stealthily moving through the station to gather intelligence on the Syntherians' movements. Her voice echoed in Henry and Xena's minds. "They're spreading out, targeting our key systems. This isn't a random attack. They're after something specific." As Henry used his enhanced strength to clear debris and create safe passages for the fleeing dignitaries, he processed the information Lyra was feeding them. The pieces began to fall into place. "They're not here for destruction," he realized aloud. "They're harvesting our technology." Xena's patterns swirled with concern. But why? What could they want with such a diverse array of alien tech? Their answer came in the form of a Syntherian unit that burst through a nearby door. Its sleek, metallic body seemed to shift and adapt as it moved, incorporating elements of the station's design into its own structure. "They're artificial intelligences," Lyra's voice rang in their heads, "highly advanced and evolving in real time." Henry engaged the Syntherian, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge its lightning-fast attacks. As they grappled, he noticed the creature's eyes, not optical sensors, but complex holographic displays showing rapidly changing code. They're using Harmony as a buffet of new technologies to upgrade themselves. Henry grunted as he finally managed to overpower the Syntherian, smashing its central processor. Xena's skin flashed with alarm. "If they assimilate all the tech here, they'll be unstoppable. We have to find a way to neutralize them." As they fought their way through the station's corridors, disabling Syntherian units and helping stranded dignitaries, Henry's mind raced. They needed a way to counter the AI's adaptive abilities, something that could overwhelm their capacity to evolve. Suddenly it hit him. "The terraforming systems," he exclaimed. "If we can reconfigure them to create extreme localized environments, We might be able to outpace their adaptation. Lyra's form shimmered with excitement. Brilliant! Their physical forms won't be able to keep up with rapid environmental shift. With renewed purpose, the trio fought their way towards the station's central control hub. Their path was fraught with danger as they encountered waves of increasingly advanced Syntherian units. Xena's bioluminescent pulses created disorienting light shows, confusing the AI's sensors, while Lyra's stealth allowed her to flank and disable their opponents. As they approached the control hub, they were met with an unexpected sight. Victor Kane, leader of the Earth First movement, stood with a group of his followers, weapons trained on the approaching trio. "Stop right there!" Kane shouted, his face a mask of suspicion and fear. "We won't let you aliens destroy everything we've built." Henry raised his hands slowly, his mind racing to find a way to defuse the situation. "Kane, listen to me. The real threat isn't us, it's the Syntherians. They're here to steal our technology and use Harmony as a base to attack Earth and other worlds. We need to work together if we want to save everyone on this station, human and alien alike." Kane's eyes narrowed, but Henry could see the doubt creeping in. The station shuddered as another explosion rocked the structure, and Kane's grit wavered. "How do I know I can trust you?" he asked, his weapon lowering slightly. Henry met his gaze steadily. "Because right now, we're all that stands between Earth and a threat beyond anything you've imagined. Are you willing to risk everything on your prejudice?" After a tense moment, Kane lowered his weapon completely. "What's the plan?" With Kane and his followers now allied with them, Henry, Xena, and Lyra burst into the control hub. The room was a hive of activity, with Syntherian units interfacing directly with the station's systems. "Hold them off!" Henry shouted as he rushed to the main control panel. Xena and Lyra moved in perfect synchronization, their abilities complementing each other as they engaged the Syntherians. Henry's fingers flew over the controls, his mind working in overdrive as he reconfigured the terraforming systems. The station groaned as localized environmental changes swept through different sections, freezing some areas and superheating others. The effect on the Syntherians was immediate and dramatic. Their adaptive abilities, so formidable in stable conditions, were overwhelmed by the rapidly changing environments. Units began to malfunction and shut down, unable to cope with the extreme shifts. However, as Henry watched the monitors, he saw one Syntherian unit adapting faster than the others, moving purposefully through the chaos towards the control hub. Its form was more advanced than any they had encountered so far, shifting and changing with incredible speed. "The leader," Henry breathed, realizing the true challenge was yet to come. He turned to face the door, ready for the final confrontation that would determine the fate of Harmony Station, Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.